For 2 weeks, the world held its breath. The shadow of Tehran had finally stepped into the light, but only as a ghost. Since the assassination of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in late February, the West has been asking one question: who is actually in charge of Iran? On Thursday, March 12, 2026, we got our answer. But it didn't come in a victory parade or a televised speech. It came as a chilling written message read by a news anchor, signaling that Mojtaba Khamenei has officially broken his silence. But as his words echo across the globe, they leave behind a trail of urgent, unanswered questions. He mentioned opening new fronts in areas where the enemy is vulnerable. What exactly could these fronts be? And why does he think the West is inexperienced there? What does he mean by a regret-inducing defense? And is the mention of 1-ton warheads a sign that the rules of engagement have changed forever? And perhaps most importantly, if he carries out his threat to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed for a full year, what will the world look like in 2027? What he said isn't just a message to his people. It is a declaration of a new, more dangerous phase of global conflict that forces us to re-examine the very map of the Middle East. This declaration marks the beginning of what analysts are already calling the Mojtaba Doctrine, a strategy that promises to dismantle the existing power structures of the West through unconventional and terrifying means. One of the most striking elements of this doctrine is the deliberate and calculated expansion of the war into entirely new territories. Mojtaba explicitly stated that studies have been conducted to identify fronts where the enemy is vulnerable and lacks experience. This signifies a radical departure from the traditional battlefields we have grown accustomed to over the last few decades in the Middle East. Instead of just fighting in the deserts of Syria or on the borders of Israel, Iran is now looking at the global map to find the weak links in the Western armor. The first of these vulnerabilities lies deep beneath the surface of the world's oceans, where the U.S. military is significantly less prepared for a silent war. While the West focuses on the sky, almost all global internet traffic and trillions of dollars in daily financial transactions move through fiber optic cables resting on the seabed. Iran has spent years developing a sophisticated fleet of midget submarines and autonomous underwater drones specifically designed for infrastructure sabotage. If these best friends of Iran cut these cables in the Mediterranean or the Arabian Sea, the digital economy of Europe and the United States could go dark in an instant. There is almost no experience in defending thousands of miles of deep-sea cable against a state-sponsored actor, making it the perfect new front for an asymmetric adversary. Beyond the sea, the new leadership in Tehran is looking at the long-haul shipping routes that are currently attempting to bypass the Middle East entirely. As global trade tries to go around the Cape of Good Hope to avoid the current conflict, Iran is preparing to harass these vessels thousands of miles from its own shores. This strategy turns the entire southern hemisphere into a potential combat zone, stretching the U.S. Navy to a breaking point it has never faced before. The third new front exists in the intersection of the digital and physical worlds, specifically targeting the operational technology of Western power grids. Mojtaba's message hints at a shift toward a war that targets the very survival of civilian populations by triggering cascading failures in electricity and water systems. This expansion of the battlefield is summarized by a phrase that has sent chills through every intelligence agency: regret-inducing defense. To understand this term, you must look past the standard political rhetoric and into the logic of total, unmitigated deterrence. Mojtaba is telling the world that the era of proportionate responses is dead and buried. Every strike against Iranian soil will now be met with a response so devastating that the attacker will instantly regret their decision to engage. This philosophy of regret is backed by a terrifying new reality in Iranian missile technology that prioritizes mass destruction over simple precision. We are now seeing the deployment of missiles equipped with warheads weighing over 1 ton, roughly 1,500 kilograms of high explosives. A single 1-ton warhead possesses enough power to erase entire city blocks or sink the largest aircraft carriers in the world with one successful hit. When Mojtaba speaks of regret, he is envisioning the sight of leveled military bases and devastated economic hubs that can never be rebuilt. This is designed to force Western leaders into a state of analysis paralysis, where the fear of the consequence prevents them from taking any action at all. The goal is to make the psychological and physical cost of the war higher than any prize the West could hope to win. This regret factor is directly linked to the most immediate physical weapon in Iran's arsenal: the permanent blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Mojtaba's first official decree was an order for the strait to remain closed, describing it as a strategic lever of pressure that will not be released. To the average citizen, this might feel like a distant naval dispute, but the implications for your daily life are nothing short of apocalyptic. If this door to 20% of the world's oil and 25% of its natural gas remains locked for a full year, the global economy will face a reckoning like never before. Within the first 3 months, global oil prices will likely soar past $250 a barrel, making basic transportation a luxury for only the extremely wealthy. As the months drag on, the industrial core of Europe will begin to shut down because it can no longer afford the energy to keep its factories running. In this 1 year later scenario, the US dollar could lose its status as the world's reserve currency as the entire petrodollar system collapses. Iran is essentially holding the global economy hostage, betting that their population can endure hardship longer than the soft consumers of the Western world. They are using the strait as a strangulation device, hoping to force a total collapse of Western financial dominance without needing a nuclear weapon. This economic siege is supported by a network of allies that Mojtaba affectionately called his best friends in the official statement. This axis of resistance is no longer a loose collection of militias, but has become a coordinated international military alliance. Hezbollah in Lebanon continues to serve as the long arm, capable of raining tens of thousands of rockets onto any target in the region. The Houthis in Yemen have proven themselves to be the gatekeepers, effectively shutting down the Suez Canal route and the Red Sea. In Iraq, the various paramilitary groups ensure that the U.S. military is pinned down and unable to focus its full attention on the Iranian heartland. However, Mojtaba's message suggests that this axis is growing even larger and more integrated into a global anti-West coalition. He is reaching out to the global South, seeking to build a coalition of nations who are tired of being controlled by Western economic interests. This includes a deepening military partnership with Russia, where satellite intelligence and electronic warfare tactics are shared in real time between the two powers. By fostering these best friends, Iran has created a decentralized war machine that cannot be destroyed by hitting a single capital city or a single leader. It is a Hydra-like entity, where cutting off one head only leads to 3 more appearing in different parts of the world simultaneously. The final and perhaps most groundbreaking pillar of this new doctrine is a direct ultimatum issued to the neighbors of the Islamic Republic. Mojtaba issued a stern warning to those countries that host American military facilities, pointing out that recent strikes were launched from their soil. He explicitly stated that while Iran had avoided hitting the host countries themselves so far, that period of restraint is officially over. His recommendation was for these governments to determine their position and close those American bases as soon as humanly possible. This is a strategy of Finlandization, where Iran is using the threat of total destruction to force its neighbors into a state of forced neutrality. If you are a leader in a Gulf state, you are now being forced to choose between the protection of a U.S. military under fire or a separate peace with Iran. Mojtaba is betting that the fear of a 1-ton warhead hitting a financial district or a refinery will be enough to break the U.S. alliance system in the region. All of these threats and strategies come from a man who has yet to show his face or even record his own voice for the public to hear. The fact that Mojtaba Khamenei remains an unseen leader adds a layer of mystery and psychological terror to every command he issues. He has become a ghost in the machine, an idea that cannot be easily killed, bargained with, or humanized by his enemies. His first message has not just set the tone for his leadership, it has set a fire that is currently consuming the foundations of the old world order. We are now living in the shadow of the Mojtaba Doctrine, where the lights might go out at any moment and the seas are no longer safe for trade. The question for the world is no longer whether we can stop the new leader of Iran, but how much regret we are prepared to endure to try. This is the new reality of 2026, where a single written message has rewritten the rules of survival for the entire human race. As we watch the news in the coming weeks, every move Iran makes will be a direct reflection of these specific directives. The world is holding its breath once again, waiting to see if the ghost of Tehran will finally emerge from the shadows to finish what his message started. For now, the silence of the leader is just as loud as the explosions of his regret-inducing missiles hitting their targets across the region.